of Basecamp research. We've got some big news to cover today because Basecamp is building what you can think of as the Internet of Biology. But they're not just doing it by scraping existing data, they're going out into the physical world and generating entirely new biological data at scale. And they've now partnered with none other than NVIDIA and Anthropic, and we're going to talk all about what that means. First and foremost, let me just say this is called the Trillion Gene Atlas. We're going to talk a bunch about stuff that I know absolutely nothing about, so I'll try and make it accessible, or at least try and get Oliver to make it accessible for all of us. He's here to talk about building a massive data moat in the real world, the future of AI-designed medicines, and scaling a category-defining deep tech company out of Europe. Oliver, tell me the origin story. What is Basecamp all about?
Hey Andreas, thank you very much, and wonderful to be here, and thank you so much for the opportunity. Basecamp Research is in sort of simple terms, trying to build the ChatGPT, but for biology, right? So in the way that ChatGPT was trained on the internet, we're doing the same thing, but for DNA. We are trying to program DNA in the same way that ChatGPT programs language. That's ultimately what we're trying to do.
We all know the Human Genome Project. How is this different? Is it just because it's for all of biology
Yeah.
instead
So,
of
so,
just the human
so the
genome?
thing that's really cool about this is mapping the entire tree of life. So what's not really understood sort of more broadly is that about 68% of all data we have of life on Earth comes from about 5 species. That's humans, rats, mice, a few others, right?
Yeah,
So most of everything we know about how life works,
yeah,
okay, is just from 5 species. There
yeah.
are trillions and trillions of species on planet Earth, and basically this is a massive quest to go out and map them at a truly, global scale.
And it's pretty daunting and pretty impressive. Tell me, how do you come about to build this idea? I know you're not just a desk research guy. You're actually someone who's been quite a bit in the field as well.
Yeah, so I mean, myself and my co-founder, we both were doing PhDs at the same time. We've worked together for decades now. I was doing mine in cancer research. He was doing his in synthetic genomics, which is basically trying to edit genes to make new medicine. So he was trying to edit genes to make a HIV drug. I was trying to build better ways of developing cancers for brain therapy, for brain tumors, right? So we were both sort of in the lab, like properly doing nerdy stuff. And then the other thing we were doing on the side of it was we were running expeditions to the remote parts of the planet to basically try and explore what was out there. And a lot of this came from, just to put it into context, this was sort of 2019 time, just after OpenAI's scaling law paper came out. And it basically said, look, here's an amazing opportunity if we combine these 3 things. What we're going to do is we're going to go out and map planet Earth. We're going to find all the new biology. We're going to feed it into a transformer model. And then we're going to transform medicine because we know exactly what we would do. We just don't have the ability to go from DNA to that medicine that we want.
How do you go about mapping?
So we actually go out around the world. So our sort of light bulb moment was in 2019. We ran the first expedition to do fully off-grid DNA sequencing. Now let me break that down. The first expedition is basically a month on an ice cap, unsupported, with a sledge, in a tent, living, nose to tail, if you want to call it that,
Yeah.
with your friends and
Yeah.
colleagues, if you want to call it that. And then the other part is, actually like DNA sequencing, right? So you're trying to map all the weird new biology that's in that amazing location. So we were in Iceland, we were in a hot spring, we weren't in a hot spring, we were near a hot spring. Our tent was on the ice cap. We were going out every day, we were like looking in the hot spring. And basically the thing that sort of blew our mind was we ran it through the computer when we were there. And I think 78% of the data we collected just then was completely unknown to science, right? So we had discovered, thousands of new species just there and then in that tent. And that basically was the light bulb moment of like, oh, wow, if it's not that easy, but it's that easy, let's go and do this at scale.
Yeah. So tell me, you did that at the ice caps, and that I'm sure is super difficult, super expensive. Why do it there? Why not go out in my yard? If we only know all the data we have is on the basis of 5 species, more or less.
Yeah.
Well, why are you not picking up my dog, who's a King Charles right here, and then and then start sequencing him? Why go through the ice caps?
So we are now. So we're doing the whole planet now. So just to be clear, we will now work in 31 countries, right?
Yeah.
This is South America, Africa, Antarctica, like, volcanic islands. We work all across the planet. The like we do all sorts of like zoos and that sort of thing as well, right? So we do local stuff as well, but it's more about how do you map the entire of the earth. So the reason we have the 5 species is because those are the easiest 5 species to map, and most of the data we have comes from Western Europe. It comes from local, like, close to research labs.
Yeah.
Our like whole premise was like, right, we're going to change that. We're going to hit that nail on the head, and we're going to go out and actually do the hard yards and build what we call the new internet of biology.
And how do you do this? Like, make it clear to me, because it sounds like a completely daunting task. What's the type of organization that can do this? What's the partnerships that are enabled, and where does NVIDIA and Anthropic fit into all of this?
Yeah, so we have spent the last 5 or 6 years building partnerships with biodiversity partners around the world. So this is, research labs, academics, people who are already in that local environment, who are experts in that local environment. So take, somewhere like Malawi or Cameroon, we partner with, local people or local scientists who are on the ground in that area, who want to study their biodiversity anyway. And basically we give them resources and, financial compensation and that sort of thing to allow them to study it in exchange for some of the data. And if we make money off that data, we give them a royalty back. So what you do is you build this flywheel of like reward, essentially, for studying their biodiversity, which is, it's super cool as as a premise. And then on the other side of it, you've got the big guys like NVIDIA and Anthropic who want to move into biology, right? They see that as the next frontier for these models. And you're saying, right, well, we've got the largest data set. We've got a way to grow it that rewards those on the ground. Just like one of the really cool things about Basecamp is our models are trained at sort of GPT-4 scale now, and they'll get bigger over time. But they are the only models that I'm aware of that have consent attached to every single training token, which I think is pretty cool.
I was about to say, this sounds like Bitcoin for biology.
Well, it's not. It's not a million miles away, because I think the thing people don't really like appreciate is just how much of life on Earth is completely unexplored, right? Yeah. We know a fraction of 1% of what's out there, and there is so much to be found. And what's super cool is if you can repurpose biology and you can learn from it, it has the answers to humanity's greatest challenges, right? Cures for diseases, plastic degradation, all those different challenges we have, all in biology.
Can you give me some examples of truly groundbreaking developments that have been made on the back of it? Because one part is, of course, gathering the data and figuring all that stuff out. That's your core. What are the people like Anthropic and NVIDIA, or maybe because they're at the cusp of this, only just getting into biology? I imagine you already have pharma companies that are working on the basis of your data. Can you talk about the breakthroughs that has been possible because of this?
Yeah, so our goal has always been to push the frontier of these models, right? So the bigger the model gets, the more it can do. And we've had 2 big breakthroughs on the technical side. One is, well, as I said before, the ability to expand the data set, right? So in ChatGPT terms, that's like the bigger GPT, right? So the big, like GPT-3, GPT-4, that's that version. The second version is the chat bit, right? How do you actually talk to this thing? What can it do, right? And so we've tackled that as well. And in January, we put out a paper that talks about our Eden models. And they are the first models that we're aware of where you can type in disease biology and get out a medicine, right? And it's not perfect. It doesn't work well, it's pretty damn good actually. But it's not something we can inject right now. But it's surprisingly good, right? In the first assays, it works near 100% of the time on basically any different test we try it. But importantly, you've built something that in principle, you can type in what's wrong and it gives you a medicine in response to that. And I think when people hear that, they think, okay, well, if I've got a cold or a cough, I'm going to, have something I can write in. It's not really going to be that to start with. It's going to be for much more serious diseases, right? So if you have cancer, or you have a child with genetic disease, or you have someone with a serious infection, they're already going to be in hospital for a while anyway. And they're already going to have complex therapeutic interventions. And this is about having models that can guide that and can learn from the biology of the disease and generate medicines in response.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible. We haven't spoken about this in this conversation at all, so let's just touch on that. What kind of investors are behind you? How much have you raised to date? Where do you see this going from a pure founder perspective, building a company here? What are we looking at?
So we're now 60 people, just for context. We have 40 in the sort of AI data side, based in London, and we have 20 on the sort of therapeutics or biology translation side in Boston, in the US. We've raised way over 100 million. The last announcement we made on this was NVIDIA coming in. And what was quite cool about that is we worked with NVIDIA on the Eden models for over a year, right? Them embedded in our team. And on the Monday it was due to be announced. On the Friday before, they put a sizable investment into Basecamp. So it was like, okay, this is kind of cool in terms of the timing. But yeah, no, we have some great investors from the co-chair of Roche and people like that, like people from all over the different parts of tech and pharma, basically.
Incredible. Okay, then tell me a bit about if I go to this plain English part. How far are we from being able to truly have programmable biology where that's kind of accepted, everyone in medicine understands it, works with it, and we're getting to that point where we're all hoping we will be able to get to, that we will be able to cure almost all diseases because we can now run much faster experiments and trial development?
Yeah, it's a really hard one to answer, and there have been a lot of very high-profile people that have promised the world in this space.
Yeah.
I am technically 100% certain that it is possible. And I am technically 100% certain it's coming in the next few years, that it will be physically feasible to take a patient record in one side, to have an algorithm process or some agentic system process that information and design a therapeutic candidate that has a high probability of working in one step, right? That is coming, and we are really surprisingly close to that. I think it's a little bit analogous to driverless cars. Think about driverless cars, right? Like, they've been technically possible for probably a decade by now, right? But they're only just starting to hit the streets of London. And maybe, and there's a whole load of challenges there. What's likely to happen here is the technology is capable of doing it. I mean, we saw the story with the guy who cured his dog, right? Like, it's technically possible to do these things, and it will get very, very, very good very quickly. The point at which that interfaces with the hospital system, I think there's going to be a lag. But I guess we're not that big a team. Our whole purpose is like getting to that future where it's technically feasible with the help of the Anthropics and NVIDIA and all the other parties we've got around the table. And driving a future that's better for everyone, because there is so much unmet need in the healthcare system. It's not like ChatGPT where we're good at poems and maybe get slightly better at poems, but there's not much. Humans are here, and maybe these algorithms can get here. In healthcare, we know what we want to do, right? We have people who are ill, we have an overstretched healthcare system, and we have models that are here today, right? And there is a huge gap in the middle. And basically, if Basecamp can make small incremental changes in that, and hopefully someday the whole thing. Then that will be, from a founder perspective, that's what you get up in the morning for.
Yeah, very cool. Oliver, try and help me understand something, and I'm by no means an AI expert, and I'm even less a biology expert. But in AI, we always talk about this. Do you need synthetic data, or can models logically deduce the answer to something, or do you just feed it with more data? And then it gets smarter by that. Where are we on this? I assume that given you're focusing on the mapping part, you're saying that to be able to do things really meaningfully in medicine and biology, we need that data layer to be much more expansive than it is today, because there's no way a model will be able to logically deduce its way all the way there.
So synthetic data works really well in circumstances where you can simulate it, right? So you have basically one model that simulates it. So the driverless cars, right? You basically build a world model that looks like you're driving along, and it, like a computer game, right? So or a flying game, right? You drive it along and you have fun and you see all the weather and the people running out, and you can simulate that. And so then that synthetic data you can train against. In biology, we don't have an equivalent, because we know, well, maybe we do in those 5 species, but we do not in the rest of it. And if we're trying to build, I mean, this is kind of our thesis, right? If you push towards generalized biological intelligence, which is mapping Earth, learning from, evolution as consistently and as a larger scale as you can, that will drive outcomes. And I think it's important to recognize that the scaling curves of these technologies in biology are also, advancing very, very rapidly, right? The cost of DNA sequencing is dropping very rapidly. The power of the compute models, the GPU acceleration of these models is also accelerating fast. And basically what Basecamp is trying to do always is ride the very frontier of those waves, right? So we're not doing this alone. We're not doing this in isolation. And we are doing it with the help of partners in 31 countries as well, right? So it's a massive effort that is crystallized through the sort of Basecamp engine, if you like.
Yeah. Oliver, tell me, why is it valuable to know the genetic makeup of a dung beetle to solve medicine for humans?
Exactly the same reason that ChatGPT needs to learn from Reddit comments to write your homework, right? The transformer moment in natural language was the moment when they realized that rather than complex algorithms, complex ways of learning about language, right? So that the original way that we tried to learn language was you would learn grammar, you'd learn semantics, you'd learn all these different rules of language. And then basically they figured out, some of our friends figured out that if you just take the transformer architecture, which is incredibly simplistic at its core, it's just A is next to B, which is next to C, right? And you do that at a massive scale, it somehow gets intelligent, right? And it's not quite as literal as that. I'm just simplifying it a bit. But that same premise has not yet been ported over to biology because we don't yet have the internet of biology to train from, right? And so the race we're seeing in the natural language space between Anthropic, ChatGPT, OpenAI, all the others, is basically because the internet exists. It's can you build models at the scale of the internet? Can you iterate and can you innovate faster? And then also, there's been companies like Scale AI that have been very large because they've been able to supply higher quality training data over time. Basecamp's data will not probably be the only data set we ever need, but it's definitely an important missing piece in the generalizability of these models.
Yeah. Let me ask you some founder questions because you've built something that I'm sure that there's a lot of you in Europe and the world that are trying to achieve as well. Tell me, you come from a research background. What is the thing that has surprised you the most of being a founder and where you say, this is really something you got to prepare for if you want to be successful?
So I think the thing that most researchers struggle with is giving away things. Right? When you start the company, you are doing everything. And then basically your job over time is just increasingly to be a storyteller, right? To be a communicator, to communicate what you want to do. And so I think the way I would talk about particularly deep tech startups, right? It's less true in the software business, other areas of startups. But if you want to start a deep tech startup, you have to know exactly what you want to do in 5-10 years time, right? You know what you want to achieve. And then you basically consider, is a startup or an academic lab or one of these other views the right way to go? And for us, the nature of what we were trying to do and the size of what we were trying to do, a startup is the perfect way to go. But I think people only come on board and only want to work with you who are truly good if they can see you're very genuine about that, right? So very best people at the intersection of AI and biology, right? They can tell whether you mean it or not. Right. And they can tell if you're there just to sort of start a company and it's kind of fun and we've been through an accelerator and this isn't the new frontier. When you're doing this day in, day out for years and years and years, if you don't have that very clear where you want to go and very clear belief that it can be done and you will just get it done. And it doesn't matter who bets against you, if you like, you will just, set out to prove them wrong. And we've had a lot of setbacks at Basecamp, to be clear, right? Things don't go right all the time. But I think it's that, if you are a researcher and you have a view of what the world needs to look like this is an amazing place to be, but just, it's also, a long journey. And that's absolutely fine, but it's a privilege to be part of it as well.
I imagine, Oliver, that you have experienced probably more than almost anyone what it's like to be building in the dungeons where no one cares about what you're doing in 2019, to then all of a sudden be the star of the moment and everyone is saying this is going to be the next big thing. And for you guys did well. So for that reason, everyone's eyes started to turn to you. Can you talk a bit about managing through that, what it does to yourself as your own psyche and also the team psyche, and how to stay disciplined through a process like that?
I think for us, it's relatively easy. We are nowhere near where we need to be yet, right? Like, basically, I want a model where patient comes in, right? Someone with, serious cancer that no one knows how to treat, or a baby is born with genetic disease no one knows how to treat, and you can write in what's gone wrong, or you can give it the information, and it tells you what to do, right? And not only tells you what to do, it achieves a level of sophistication that we would never have been able to achieve, and it sort of, it simultaneously increases the number of patients that we can treat, but also lowers the burden, right? So it's like, for me, it's not like we're not there yet, right? Like, I need Anthropic, I need NVIDIA, I need those other people to help me do what I want to do. And I have a lot of respect for them, and they are very, very good. But like honestly, the Trillion Gene Atlas for us feels like the starting gun on the next phase of Basecamp. It's like we built the first database, we built these partnerships around the world for like 5 years. We built this Eden model, which is, GPT-4 scale model, which, you can type in disease biology and it gives you the output, and it works sort of, antimicrobials as an example, right? You type in pathogens, the WHO critical priority pathogens, and it spits out like working antibiotics with 97% accuracy, right? Like, it's pretty cool that it can do that. But like, honestly, it's now right. Okay, we've proven the start of that thesis. We know it can be done, and we have a route to doing it. And now it's like our responsibility, almost because we can see it, to go out and do that.
All right, it's incredible. I want to ask you just one question on Europe before we close, and that is, of course, you're building a truly category-defining company. I'm sure that everyone is trying to pull you and your company to a million different places. So tell me, what is it like building out of Europe? Why are you committed to staying in London? What are you seeing that we should be doing differently? Would you wish that our ecosystems were more helpful to you, or would you say, no, the support has been incredible, I love being here?
I think the reality, so there's two parts, right? There's a reality to the difference, right? There is a capital structure difference, which is pretty obvious to everybody, and that will, and has manifested itself in basically Basecamp being predominantly US owned, right? That's just the nature of life, and that probably will continue until something drastic happens. But the other thing, which is much easier to fix and much more, and genuinely much more helpful, is the vibes in a way, right? Like, basically, Basecamp is doing something that could have a profound impact on humanity, but there's also a reality that it may not work out as promised, or it may take longer than we expect, or it may, something may go wrong. And basically, you want to have an environment that goes, you know what, that was a good thing to try, right? And there are 5 other things here that are also good things to try. And we as a society should invest in those who are willing to put their life and their career into doing this, because it's not easy, right? And it takes a lot of effort, but it's a sort of attitude shift, right? Rather than saying, oh, it fell apart, we knew that would fall apart, it was a silly idea. Let's try and make these ideas work, just as a mentality shift. But because for us, we're at the intersection of AI and biology. London is the best place in the world for that. I mean, there's been some very famous figures come out of that exact ecosystem. The UK has a historical advantage in what we call domain AI, which is, you need the domain expertise plus the AI expertise. We're probably not going to win in generic LLMs, and we shouldn't really try. But in the domains, I think we have an opportunity to absolutely win out, right? And the US firms are now coming to the UK to see that. The question is, can we keep it here, and can we keep this ecosystem alive? And honestly, the thing that's going to kill it is people just like being negative on it, right? Honestly, it's as simple as that.
Yeah. Have you found that the talent that you're looking for, that you need to build this, they get it and they make that jump, or are you seeing we still gotta spend quite some time convincing researchers at the frontier to join us?
No, there are 2 things I hold paramount when hiring at Basecamp. One is they need to be absolutely pumped about what Basecamp is doing, right? So you can go on the website, you can see there's so much press and YouTube or whatever you can see now. Like, it's not really excusable that you come to Basecamp now not really understanding kind of what we do, right? It's like, not if you're generic, some ops or whatever, that's fine. But if you are deep technical expert, I expect you to do the first level of reading the papers, right? Or whatever it is. But I don't mind why you're pumped about Basecamp. The people who build partnerships around the world who work with the UN and do all those different things, they're pumped up Basecamp for a completely different reason to the people in Boston who are actually making medicine, right? So, but they're all pumped about it as a principle, and they're all excited to work together, and they all realize that there's a like interplay where they all depend on each other. Then the other part to it is just making sure that they're better than you, right? And if you come out of a good research lab and you've been in a good research environment, like it's very easy to see if people are better than you. And generally, the argument people have is if they tell you you're wrong in the first interview. The best people I've ever hired in the first interview, I said, so this is what we want to do, this is what we want to go. And they were like, that's wrong. And I'm like, you know what? Now I'm listening. So you basically just want to make sure people are better than you and they're pumped about Basecamp, because that allows you to give it away, basically. It allows you to say, look, this person is a world expert in this space and they are super excited about what we're trying to do. Like they have complete responsibility. We should check in, we should talk, all that sort of thing. And, you know, but ultimately I'm going to give them that responsibility and see what happens.
Yeah, incredible. Oliver, incredibly important what you're doing, incredible what you've built so far. What's the shout out we should give to everyone who tuned in today?
I think if it's, European focused, I think it's just that we should be proud of the technology that's actually being built in Europe right now. There are some great founders, and Basecamp is one of them, but there are many, many others in Europe that are around who are working very hard and building amazing technology. And honestly, I think it just gives us a great cause to be optimistic. Super excited and very grateful for your time this morning.
Of course. Anyone who tuned in today, I would say that if you're excited about what happens when you train AI models on quadrillions of tokens in biology, Basecamp Research is the place to go. Head over to basecampresearch.com. And that is, of course, both whether you're an AI researcher or a biotech organization looking to collaborate on the Trillion Gene Atlas, or you simply just want to join the team that is building the ultimate biological foundation model, because there are a bunch of